Um, got it. Just got the recording notification. I'm Brennan Brinkley. I'm the lead animator on Natural Habitat. This is Nicole Low and Tyler.
Hi.
Okay.
I'm also a writer. I do some character design, some character models, and some backgrounds.
I do some writing storyboards and mainly 3D pre-visualization.
Yeah, and we're actually former animation classmates. We went to Florida State University's College of Motion Picture Arts. So we do not have a biology background. We do not have a zoology background, anything that really qualifies us to be doing this, but here we are anyway. We kind of just, we wanted a bit of a creative outlet because, you know, we aren't in school for it anymore. We have, you know, relatively creative jobs, but we wanted to keep animating for fun on the side as a hobby. And this is kind of, you know, we wanted to continue working together, continue collaborating. So it's kind of how this all began. Here are our first 3 videos with the fun facts with a little bit of information about each animal at the bottom.
Excuse me, where can I find acorns?
Let me see. Yeah, that's gonna be out 4.
Do you mind checking if those are organic?
All right, will that be paper or plastic?
Mouth.
Pardon?
Mouth.
Mouth?
Please take your receipt.
So those were the first 3 shorts we made, and we kind of made them in a bit of a bundle package. And we made them because, like I said, we were just feeling a little creatively deprived. It was something that I had been wanting to do for a while. I had these characters. Back in school, I designed these characters around this kind of watercolor aesthetic, and I wanted to create a children's book-esque, you know, kind of 2D animation style that I could recreate in 3D, because I'm not a 2D artist, I'm a 3D artist. And it's something that I love mixing mediums, and it's a style that I really love. And so I kind of just held on to these characters for a while, not really having a place for them, but it just seemed like a good opportunity to finally use them.
So we just showed you our first 3 videos, and originally the concept was going to be much different. We were going to do sort of a mockumentary, animated documentary style, where we interview people in like our grocery store and then animate on top of them. But we had full-time jobs, so we decided to do something shorter, and we found that TikToks and Instagram Reels had like the perfect time frame for us to just focus on like 1 short gag per video. So that's how we came up with our first 3. We did some brainstorming, but after we sent them out to some friends and family, a lot of them didn't know what echolocation was. So we decided to add the fun facts in as like the video descriptions. And that's kind of how we got what we have right now. And it really allowed us to take inspiration from fun facts and to kind of center our videos around those.
So here we kind of have, you know, just a brief overview of our development process. And this normally begins with us just naturally brainstorming, just coming up with as many ideas as we possibly can. And This is thinking up a bunch of facts that we already know, or Googling and looking up a bunch of facts that are interesting or funny to us. And once we find that fact, we need to make sure it's legitimate. So that's us basically citing our sources and making sure that it is legitimate as possible. It can also be us going onto YouTube and making sure that these animals are actually doing the fact that we found, because some of them are just so bizarre and weird to us that we can't believe it. And once we're kind of past that stage, we move on to the writing stage. And this is kind of where we bridge the educational element with the funny, memorable part. And even though we just wrote Just Goof in here, it's really us just sitting down and coming up with as many funny human scenarios or predicaments as possible until something just makes total sense with that fact. And once we kind of have all the writing locked down, we want to see it visually. So that's when we move into the storyboarding and previs stage. And depending on the video we're making, we'll either draw it out or sometimes we'll do it in 3D. And once we have the lay of the land kind of there, we move into building assets. So this is modeling, rigging, shading, texturing, lighting, and background painting. Essentially the things that make the video look beautiful. And once that's all kind of accomplished, we move into the actual production. So the voice acting, you'll either hear, normally you'll hear mine or Brennan's voice, either screaming or just some creepy, weird voice. And yeah, moving along from there, it's the animation. Now, to Brennan, this is hell because he actually has to do it. To me and Nicole, this is heaven because we get to sit back and relax and watch Brennan suffer. And once that is all kind of accomplished, we move into the comping and editing. And this is where we take all the pieces that we've been working on and putting it all together. And essentially what you see, the final product.
So Tyler just talked a little bit about brainstorming, but I'll go into a little bit more. It's not really like a set process, it's kind of fluid. Usually we'll just find time to sit down and throw ideas at each other. You can see some of our scribbles down at the bottom, but sometimes it's us looking up animal facts and just reading through and seeing if we find one that's interesting. And then we try to apply it to a human situation. For example, I don't know how many people have seen our latest video, but it's about how beavers hate the sound of running water. So we tried to find a situation where a beaver could be near running water in a human world. So we had, some of our ideas were having him as a busboy, having him at a spa, and the one we ended up going with was him at a lazy river in a water park. So yeah, it's basically just trying all three of us to find something that's funny. And if all three of us don't find something funny, we move on or we go back to the drawing board.
So our research process is, I wish I could say there was more to it than there is, but it's really just us kind of Googling animal facts. We'll kind of hone in on a specific animal and we'll look for facts about them. Anything that kind of stands out to us. We've seen some really weird ones, some ones we don't think are appropriate for our channel. There have been all sorts of just, there's so much to dive into. We could make a million videos and still have more. We always make sure that we can find multiple sources for everything we find. And I think it's a really important step, obviously, because that is what the core of our content is. But I think what makes it important is we don't necessarily make videos around the facts always. So for instance, we made a video about a bat hanging upside down and drinking coffee, and he spills coffee on someone below him. And, you know, everyone kind of knows that bats hang upside down. So that's not really that interesting. But, you know, we wrote the gag around it and we thought to ourselves, like, why do bats hang upside down? So that's what we ended up kind of making the fact about is we don't want to just present the audience with a fact. We want to present them with a fact and an explanation. You know, we want the audience to understand, you know, what they're learning about the behavior. So I think it's really important for us to deliver if we can't deliver it in the visual, we have to deliver it in the what would you call it? The copy, the description of the video. Yeah. Here are 3 more videos.
Yeah.
People, there are 2 lines. Just pick one. Ma'am, please make sure to empty everything out of your pockets.
So that one was one that I kind of came up with after having a long flight and a baby behind me. So I was trying to imagine what it'd be like with 20 babies in the plane. Yeah, here's another one.
Hurry up, we're gonna be late.
Coming.
What's the matter?
So this one is just so absolutely ridiculous. And if you just watch it on its own, there's nothing really that educational about it. We just thought it'd be really, funny to have a crow dressed up as a scarecrow and just be terrified of himself. But, you know, that kind of prompted us to do some research on crows and scarecrows and that relationship. And what we learned, and I guess what we ended up presenting, was that crows and corvids, they're incredibly smart, intelligent animals, and they don't really fall for that stuff. They're able to memorize people's faces. They're able to memorize people based on the clothes they wear. And eventually, pretty soon after, crows realize that, you know, they're not dealing with actual threats when it comes to scarecrows.
This is my stop.
Good for you too.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Yeah, so this one's definitely one of my personal favorites, because we live in New York and we experience this all the time, just seeing the strangest people of New York on subways. And we knew that making a subway video was inevitable, and incorporating some kind of animal fact into that, we knew wouldn't be the hardest task, but finding the right one was a little challenging. But I think once we learned, or we might have already known that otters, or I didn't know this initially, I think Brennan might have, that sea otters hold hands with other sea otters when they sleep so they don't drift away from each other. And once we heard that, we're like, what if sea otters were holding hands with someone that wasn't a sea otter? How would they react? And from there, we're like, where is a place where that would happen? On a subway. And it kind of all just built from there. And yeah, I think that one's just like a perfect example of like showing the build of how we kind of come up with our ideas. So yeah, as I talked about earlier, the storyboards and previs portion of the process is us just kind of doing a rough draft of how the videos will play visually. And this is really important for us to kind of see the comedic timing and making sure that what we're thinking in our heads makes sense laid out visually. So what we have here is just a couple of just like sketches, or just like a really bad 3D render of it, because we don't really want to waste time making these look pretty, because this is really just for us to see kind of the blocking and look and feel of it before actually spending countless hours creating it.
Okay, this is the best part of the movie. Wait, watch. Okay, ready? Ready, watch. That was even better on the third rewind.
So yeah, I mean, it looks absolutely horrendous, but it gets the idea across. You know, it helps Brennan and Nicole later on in the process when they're trying to actually animate and making sure that everything along the way is kind of in accordance to this blueprint that we laid out in this process.
So the next step is building assets, and assets really cover anything visual, like characters, props, backgrounds. So here we have a sketch that Brennan has done of Albie, our bunny. And from there, he models them in 3D. Usually that's in Blender. Sometimes I do it in ZBrush, which is like a sculpting program. And then he applies a toon shader, which is just what gives it the 2D look. And then on the right, we have a background, which I did for the last video. So Brennan modeled some slides, slides in 3D, and then I sketched over them in a program called Procreate, kind of just to give them like more detail and simplify them a little bit also.
This is the fun part. Man, the animation process for these videos is actually pretty simple. But I still hate it because at the end of the day, we went to school for animation and I think we all hate it. But it's a lot of fun to see the final result. It's very satisfying. I'm sure you guys can relate. You know, you read something that you wrote or something that you learned, and you know, it all comes together in the end. Oh boy. So it is the most time-consuming part of our process, and there are a lot of steps to it, such as I don't want to bore you guys with this too much, but so there are the first step to animating is to kind of block out your movements, your key poses, and your breakdowns. And basically what that means is taking the most interesting dynamic poses and getting your character into those poses. And then from there, you can kind of break it down into smaller poses, and then you do the poses in between those poses. And animate, it's animation. I'm sure everyone knows to an extent how animation works. It's the only difference with our process is that we use 3D characters. So that means we have 3D models that are shaded and rendered to appear 2D. So the most important thing for us is to maintain the same Z space. We need to maintain the same plane of existence for the characters so they don't appear too three-dimensional. That also includes making sure that their head doesn't rotate too much one way or another, because in 2D even they like to take shortcuts, and they don't want to have to think about how to rotate a character's head in 3D in their head and then reproduce it on paper. The last part of I guess it's not the last part, but the next part of the process is lip syncing, which is where Tyler or I will do a ridiculous voice. Sometimes it's someone else. Sometimes we'll bring a friend in, but we usually stick to the three of us because we're always revising our script. And basically we're just for lip syncing, it's actually like kind of a ridiculous process, but we 2D animate the different mouth shapes on top of the 3D characters. And that's why if you notice in our videos, when a character's talking, they usually won't be moving their head or like moving in space, because I don't want to have to track on the 2D drawing of the mouth movement onto the 3D animated head of the character. And if I do have to do that, I'll usually bring the mouth shape into Blender, which is the 3D software I use, and parent it to, this is so not necessary to explain, but anyway, it's a really annoying process, but it's very satisfying to see in the end. And lastly is the boil, which is basically adding a little bit of jitter, 2D movement, randomized distortion to the final look to kind of give it that that hand-drawn, every frame is a newly drawn frame kind of look. And it's something you'll see very often in older animation. You don't see it as much today. And here is the first video we made in 3D. This is a fully 3D animated scene. All the assets were rendered in 3D with a toon shader. And sometimes Nicole will do background matte paintings for them instead. But I'd say a little bit more than half the time, everything's 3D, except the mouth shapes. Here are some of our inspirations. I'd say our biggest one is easily SpongeBob. I don't know if you guys knew this, but Steven Hillenburg, the creator of SpongeBob, was a marine biologist, and he had a huge passion for marine biology and sea life. But he was also an animator. He went to Cal Arts, and he kind of wanted to merge those two passions. And while SpongeBob might not be the most educational show, I think what's important is that the roots are coming from a point of knowledge. It's coming from someone that is an expert in their field. And I think while we aren't experts, we've always looked up to Steven Hillenburg for being able to incorporate his two passions. Another show, this is one of my personal favorites, is Zaboomafoo. I'm sure no one here knows Zaboomafoo, but it was an educational PBS show about these two guys that had a pet lemur. And sometimes it would be animated, sometimes it would be live action, but they would always introduce a new animal in every episode and tell you a bit about that animal. And ever since we realized we could incorporate facts about animal behavior, that has been something I've been rewatching and putting on occasionally to see how they go about it. Magic School Bus, another huge reference. I can think of episodes where they cover animals that we cover, you know. School Bus like transforms into a bat or like a fish, you know. And then lastly, How To with John Wilson is a very new show. It's very bizarre. I don't know if anyone here has seen it, but it's basically this guy walking around New York City with a camera, and he's interviewing random people, just, you know, people watching. And that was kind of the original idea for our show, was that we would kind of just animal watch, but they would be in human situations. And we thought, what kind of behaviors would make our society just actual hell to be in? So that's kind of where it all stemmed from.
Okay, so what makes something funny? So yeah, I mean, we really don't know for sure, you know, who's to say really what makes something funny, but you know, there's so many variables that go into this, from just our audience. You know, we have such a wide range in our, you know, demographic, that there's so many reasons why this can, you know, be relatable and funny to them. But what we do know for sure is that taking something mundane and clashing it with something absurd is creating something unexpected. And when you're subverting expectations for the viewer, it's normally more intriguing, engaging, and helps with retention. And the occasional scream from an animal doesn't hurt either from our videos. You know, I think that's definitely key into what makes these amusing too. And at the core of this, though, I think our, you know, our unsung rule is, you know, whatever makes the three of us laugh is usually what we go with. It's kind of, you know, our gut feeling, and we know that when we're the three of us especially are laughing at something, then it's probably something super memorable and that's worth looking into.
So what makes something go viral? Another thing that we're not totally sure of, social media can be kind of finicky, and we're like, you never really know what's going to go viral. But here are some things that kind of helped us. Shorter videos lead to longer watch times. TikTok takes into account how long somebody watches something. So if they finish the whole video, they'll recommend it to other people's For You pages. So we try to keep our videos as succinct as possible and kind of try to get that joke in like the first few seconds. Using trending sounds and hashtags, especially when you're first starting out, just trying to get your videos to appear on people's like watch list. And finding a time to post that your followers are active. TikTok is really great in that they show you what time your followers use TikTok the most. And right now, Thursdays at noon kind of works the best for us. And lastly is posting consistently. That's something that we struggle with just because life sometimes gets in the way. But building up a stockpile of videos is a really good idea, especially at the beginning. But yeah, we try to post every 2 weeks if we can.
And lastly, why we think this works. Well, I'm not sure if it does work, but here we are. And well, firstly, I want to say that TikTok is kind of a weird platform. You know what? I'll take that back. Social media is gross. Like, no one likes social media. You know, everyone thinks of it, it has a negative connotation. No one wants to be on their phone watching, 15-second, videos that they'll forget about in a half hour. So it's something that it's not something we want to necessarily be, it's not something we want to admit to ourselves that we sunk hours into. And I think when someone watches an educational video or an educational video that they actually enjoyed on TikTok, it makes them feel a little better about being on their phone, on social media. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, but to add to that, I have a lot of educational accounts that I follow, and it's usually, a talking head, someone that is an expert in their field, or they're a professor or a teacher. I guess that is an expert in their field. And they will, relay a lot of information to you in a minute. That really, I value the content, but it's hard for me to retain it. And I think what does make our content work is that it's so short. There's usually one thing to take away from it, and it's funny, and I think, we did a little research on this beforehand, and what we did learn is that dopamine can make things easier for long-term memorization. So I could see that being a huge correlating factor. If it does work, it might not work for everyone, but I think TikTok is a great platform for education. It's just, it's not, people haven't quite figured out how to use it properly, especially because it promotes short-term content, or sorry, short runtime content. It does not promote 3-minute videos, or it, you can make a 3-minute video, but it might not perform as well. It might get kind of buried under less informative content. And these are some resources in case anyone wants to know more about our process. Everything we've done, it can be done for free with little to no knowledge. We have animation backgrounds, but we do this in our free time. We're not really, Disney or Pixar or anything like that. Anyone can do this stuff. If you guys are looking to make educational entertainment, these are some great resources. The Animal Facts site is not one we actually use, but we thought we'd throw it in there because it is actually a great resource if you want to learn more about animals.
Yeah, I think that's it. I wish we could tell you more, but like we said, we're kind of just amateurs at this. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the great talks. It's very interesting. So we are going to open to Q&A. I see Joe and Cindy raising their hand. Joe, go first.
Thank you. And I apologize for speaking to y'all through the Muppet. I'm just having real trouble with my camera today for some reason. But anyway, I thought this stuff was great. And I have two questions. First, I didn't really understand the 3D to 2D transition point. The animation looks terrific and it's really fun. Why do you take it down to 2D? Why don't you just release it in 3D? So that's the first question. Maybe I'll stop there and see if you can help me with that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm actually really happy you asked because it's something I feel way more confident in talking about. I think it's an art. It was an art style I established before anything else. It was the character designs and the look that basically started everything. And the different animals and the facts about them came afterwards. So I was stuck on the look, but from a more, I guess, I don't know, philosophical note, I don't think people like seeing low budget 3D. I've seen low budget 3D. I'm not a fan. I've never really seen too many popular 3D animated shows. Pretty much everything on the market is 2D. And I'm personally a bigger fan of 2D animation, even though I'm not the best at it. 3D is amazing. I love 3D. There's amazing 3D work out there, but it's going to be, Pixar, Disney, Blue Sky, who's gone now, but big animation studios owned by big companies that have the money and resources to, put the time, dedication it needs. Not to say that, we couldn't necessarily do something that looked pretty, but it would take way longer,
Yeah, one of the things about 3D animation, especially hyper realistic, is that it has very long render times. And if we're trying to put something out every 2 weeks, the Toon Shader just made things a lot faster.
Great point. Yeah, so much faster when we do it the way we do it.
Well, thank you. That makes great sense. And as I said, I think the look is terrific. So it wasn't a complaint, just trying to understand better. The other question is more content oriented. Your sense of humor is fabulous. I think you obviously have great taste in picking interesting, odd animal facts to work with. So my question is, do you think you could bring your same talent to science messages that were less, just oddball and more kind of things that people need to know more about? The obvious crises that we're facing that science has a lot to say about, like the environment. Would it work to try to do what you do in that kind of more serious, with that kind of more serious agenda?
I think absolutely it would. Not for every science topic. I don't think we could do a chemistry video necessarily, but in terms of global warming and climate change, I absolutely think there are ways we could incorporate it, and we've thought about going that route in a million different ways. But we would want it to be more long-term and we would want to put out something that is like longer format. We wouldn't want to make a 15-minute video about climate change or a 15-second video about climate change. And because we're artists, we're basically, we're writers, we wouldn't want to handle it in like would want to do it like in a more artistic, cinematic way, something a little bit more serious or understated instead of, more educational. At least the ways we've talked about it. We've talked about doing, writing scripts about, humans getting wiped out because of their own, undoing, and animals kind of come back. We talked about the poem "Here Comes Soft Rain," I think it's called. Nicole's a big fan of that poem. So we love the idea. We just haven't really figured out a good way to tackle it yet.
Yeah, I think we're trying to find ways to incorporate that stuff naturally, because the last thing we want to do is come off as too preachy or just disconnecting from our audience. So I think we are slowly building to something like that, and I think that's just something that's going to come with time. And once we kind of figure out the bigger picture of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Another one of our inspirations that we didn't really include is John and Hank Green. I'm sure you guys know them. They have a YouTube series called Crash Course where they kind of handle more educational content. I think John does history and Hank does science, but their videos are very funny. They're called Crash Course, and they handle like very high concept, I think, kind of videos, but they still make them funny and entertaining. So it has to be something sort of like that.
Yeah, I agree, Nicole. And I think tweens and teens love those crash course stuff, used all the time. So last thing, it's 24 hours until 12 noon on Thursday. Any chance you've got some sneak preview to share with us about the next post?
It's actually next week that we're posting.
Oh,
so we don't have anything yet, but we're going to be brainstorming after this.
We haven't even started on the next video yet.
Usually we're still working until like 1 or 2 a.m. the day before we post.
Yeah, we had a Harvard presentation to work on this week.
Thank you.
Cindy, next.
Thanks, Jen. This was absolutely fascinating. Thank you for sharing this work. And it's really entertaining. I also watched every single one of the videos on your website. But I have the kind of the same question as Joe had, but a little different. I'm wondering if you've ever thought of taking this a little bit further into an educational bent of, say science education, because that's what we do here, but using, sort of the format that you have to be able to help kids understand science concept in short time. Maybe it would be more than, a little longer than these videos, but I'm thinking, you could take something like the nocturnal animals and having them, in their habitat and what they're doing, but noticing things like, the moon or the stars, or, hey, there's no moon tonight. I'm thinking of just looking at Max's book, which you can't see here, Good Morning Moon, where, people don't realize that the moon is in fact out during the day, but then, use your animation of, nocturnal animals noticing these things and talking about them, but in, not in long formats, but things that would grab kids, but help them clarify some of the science concepts that maybe they don't have a good understanding on. But, it's really engaging to watch it in this kind of format, but also serves two purposes. One, they're entertained and they like it and they'll watch it. So I guess there's lots of purposes, but they're also learning something or clarifying something for themselves. So, I mean, I can see that this has a lot of further reach, and it's really exciting. And I think it has a lot of legs to it. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I totally see what you mean. I think I don't think we've ever discussed this as a group, but there was definitely a point where I was considering doing like kind of an interactive iPad thing for kids, and it would talk about like, oh, this is a mole, he goes underground and this is his home, something like that, which I think is kind of in the vein of what you're referring to. And I totally think that's something we could still do. I think there's like huge potential to just kind of like tackle, any sort of media and, be a little bit, you just broaden our horizons the way we could teach people in general.
I have a question. So, have you had a chance to collaborate with a scientist or with educators? I mean, regardless if you have or have not, my second question would be, how do you think scientists or educators can contribute to your work if there is an opportunity to work together with you?
We haven't really collaborated in the sense that we've worked very closely with them. Actually, on our owl video, we came up with the idea because we saw some owls at it was an owl sanctuary, and they were doing like a little booth at a fair. So we went up and talked to them and got some more like details, and then we later called them to kind of make sure that what we had was correct. We'd love to collaborate with scientists more, I think, and educators. We do get some like messages from teachers, and my mom is a teacher herself, so it's kind of like we love to hear from them. We love to know like what's working. My mom shows our videos to her class every time they come out, so it's good to know that kids are interested.
Yeah, and I think Chen, it's difficult for us to say like what could scientists and researchers do for us, because we have voice actors that reach out to us and they're like, I love to voice act, and we're like, that's awesome, we'd love to have you, but like we said, it's just such a fast and chaotic process that we don't have room for anything. Unfortunately, I don't mean that towards researchers, but we've had a hard time finding a, a place to include even people that are offering help, voice acting. People have written scripts and sent them to us, and it's like a free idea, but like, well, we don't necessarily want to just like take someone's idea, but I guess we need to think about it more. I'm sure there's a way we could find a way to collaborate with some actual research and scientists, and it would probably make our content a lot more useful. But at the moment, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but it'd be an awesome thing to discuss.
I have to agree with Chen. I'm just sitting here thinking of all kind of grant proposal opportunities of collaboration with, you as animators and video makers, and us with the trying to get this correct science concepts across. So yeah, so the grant proposals would be fun to write.
Oh, that's interesting. How do you see that that playing out, or like the collaboration process?
I'm just spitballing here, and this is way above my pay grade. I have no say here, but just throw things at the wall. But I mean, there are various grant funding agencies. We usually use the National Science Foundation, but this is such a novel way to address science concepts, and we do so much work with the next generation science standards and the core ideas, which are the standards that, at various grade band levels, kids are expected to know X, Y, and Z about matter or chemical reactions or forces, motion, et cetera. And to be able to create something where, we provide the science, we do the misconception research, we do the learning research, and you translate that into something usable by kids and by teachers. And even starting in the elementary grades where kids are starting to develop and form their ideas and build their knowledge. But the important part is to build it in a correct manner, to get the science ideas right and have them blend with their own ideas. And if it doesn't match their ideas, these are tools that and ways for them to rethink, redevelop their ideas and go, I didn't know that. But I watched this, I'm learning from this video of, again, these nocturnal animals paying attention to the sky and the moon, et cetera, or, the squirrel knocking over the shelf and the stuff on the shelves with his tail while there's force and motion and force and interaction there and things like that. And just, looking at it from a collaboration perspective, but writing a grant proposal to fund that work. And, it would be a long process. Our grant proposals usually are 2-3 years, et cetera. And you all have day jobs, so probably be a huge shift. But I just, like I said, I'm just throwing things against the wall, and that's how I think. But I think this has so much potential to help kids start learning about science, and it grabs them, it brings them in, and it helps them. I mean, they pay attention to these things, and so do adults. I mean, this could work for K to 12. So like I said, I'm just, I listen to things, I watch this has been fascinating, and I just start writing down ideas. So thanks for letting me spew that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I never thought about that, but that's a great idea.
Anybody else have questions or comments they'd like to throw out for everybody?
Yeah, so to connect to Cindy's idea, because when we think about sustaining our work as a department, we need to keep applying for grants, right, man? And how do you see yourself or your platform sustained financially? Is there enough, I don't know, like does TikTok give you support to for you to keep maintaining your platform, or do you need to invest your own resources?
I'd say we're definitely investing our own resources. I mean, you know, TikTok does have like a creator fund, but it's like, you know, if you're a video with 1 million views, you're lucky to get like $25 from it, you know. But that's a good question. We've had a lot of people reach out to us and be like, oh, could you make like a Patreon, or like I'd love to donate, or, you know, how can I help? And I think something that we're kind of afraid of, at least I'm afraid of, being the person that is kind of under the most time crunch with animation, is taking money from people and still not being able to deliver on time. You know, I think that's a big thing for me. Is right now I'm doing it, we're all doing it in our free time, and it's fun for us. But I think as soon as, you know, we have an obligation, it's going to stress us out. And that's, you know, I'm not saying that we wouldn't want to take a research grant or anything, but I think that's at least the problem with the compensation we've been offered so far, is just we can't quit our day jobs. But if we could, you know, who knows, anything's possible. But that would be amazing. That'd be insane.
Yeah, luckily all the programs we use are free, so it doesn't really cost much to keep this running. But yeah, we try to do things like merch, like stickers, but it doesn't really make much money anyway, so it's just a fun thing to do.
We'll get like 33 cents a sticker.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have question for us? Anything?
I did have a question for you, Chen Chen, actually.
Oh.
I saw in your on your bio, you had a book, or you had an illustration. It was about the pandemic, right?
Yes.
Please, I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, well, I actually gave a talk about that book a year ago. So, you know, in the year of pandemic, I was on the Max here, also here. We were sitting in Phil's class. Phil is also here, and we were talking about the greatest experiments in the history of science, and we talk about Newton and his prison experiments, and yeah, and we learned that, you know, he did all of this significant work, a good chunk of his significant work during his year in pandemic in 1666. And we just see so many similarities. And I want to kind of tell this story to young kids, to tell them that, you know, while they're bored at home, they're stuck at home, they can do some interesting stuff. And this stuff, and the question they can ask doesn't need to be very complicated. They can ask very simple questions, and it leads to interesting discoveries. So I write the story, and I found the illustrator, and also Max helped with the cover and a few pages with the illustration. So yeah, so I've been very interested in storytelling and how to use kind of cute 2D, 3D images to deliver that stories. And Max also have an interesting book about Good Morning Moon. Do you want to talk about that, Max?
Hi, yeah, sure. I think I mentioned this when Chen did his, but you all know the storybook Good Night Moon. Raise your hand if you know it. I think pretty much everyone knows it. Yeah, and so it's an eminently spoofable book. So I mean, there are like so many riffs on that book. I think the last one I looked at was Good Night Keith Moon, the drummer from The Who, and it just kind of goes on. And I did my spoof by doing a version called Good Morning Moon, where basically the rabbit, instead of going to sleep while the moon is rising, the rabbit is getting up in the morning. There you go. He's getting up in the morning. Can you show that again, Cindy? Because these guys might appreciate that. instead of having a roaring fire in the fireplace and the moon the moon coming up for the night, the fire's gone out and now the moon is coming up in the morning. And so it was just to sort of let kids see the antithesis of good night moon by seeing that the moon actually comes out during the day. And just so you know, I mean, the SED is really big about, addressing people's misconceptions about nature, and the moon is a really fertile place to begin looking at those kind of studies. So if you have any moon ideas, then it'll be super fruitful, I think, if you go in that direction.
Okay, I don't think I understood the context when Cindy brought it up earlier, the Good Morning Moon story. I love it. I now that I'm understanding what the story is about, that's amazing. Absolutely something I could see us doing. We did write. We've been trying to get into more long form stuff, and we did write something that had to do with like nocturnal animals. We wanted to do like an episode of a full length show where we showed like how different animals sleep at night, and obviously half of the animals don't sleep at night; they're up doing something, and I love that approach. That's so awesome.
Yeah, we try to come up with one picture book per year. So in comparison, you will release a video every 2 weeks. Is just so productive and amazing.
So I had a question about your style, because Chen his Newton book looks great because it's done in this really cool digital modern style, and mine is basically like a sketchbook. Like I had some ideas, sketched them down, and I didn't go through the process of what you guys do, which is sort of like beautifying and modernizing your images to be like digitally created. And I was just wondering what you thought of what the future is for sort of the hand-drawn, hand-produced artworks moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, we all love 2D art and 2D animation. Unfortunately, I don't know how to do that. I'm a 3D animator. And I hope that it's something that sticks around. I know that a lot of studios are shifting towards 3D animation instead. But I think there's something like charming and nostalgic about 2D animation, and just 2D in general that I hope people keep doing. Yeah, I think with 3D having like toon shaders and we can make things look 2D, it's kind of keeping a little bit of the old style, but just making it a lot easier and faster to do.
Yeah, Max, I think, man, I love 2D so much. I honestly, I love 2D more than I love 3D, but I hate animating 2D. But I know your question isn't necessarily about animation, and I guess when I think of the illustration world, oh yeah, I mean, it is all digital. I'm really impressed if you did everything by hand and scanned it in, or however. But yeah, I would say I'm trying to think of projects. There's a game called Cuphead, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a side-scrolling video game, kind of like Mario or Mega Man, and they hand drew every single frame with a light box, old school, and they scanned it into the game, and it's so impressive. It's so beautiful. It's so fluid. But anyway, I think there definitely is a place for hand-drawn animation illustration, but it's very niche now, and I would say it's a lot faster to have an iPad and an Apple Pencil and get some brush packs that emulate that original, that classic hand-drawn look. But yeah, everything is moving to digital, and it is kind of a shame, but also it makes things so much easier. Yeah, so
I mean, just so you know, so I've done animation too, and I spent half my time erasing all of the lead I've
smears,
my hands and fingers and things. So.
Yeah,
I'll probably turn digital sooner or later.
The thing is, I hated using tablets, and it was part of the reason I didn't like 2D animating, was using you know, like a Wacom tablet connected to a computer. It just felt so disjointed. It didn't feel right. But there's I'm gonna plug Apple, I guess. The iPad and the Apple Pen, it is like drawing on paper. It's amazing. I honestly don't understand how like it's so much better than like the actual professional equipment, at least in my opinion.
Wow. Thanks.
Great. We are 11:30. Well, thank you again for the amazing talk. I'm going to keep watching your platform and being rooting for you all. And I will order some stickers. Yeah, it's great. And yeah, we'll keep in touch. I will send you the video, the recording of your talk, and feel free to share. All right. Well, thank you everybody for attending this talk. We will see you all next month.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yes.
I'll check out Good Morning Moon and Sir Isaac Newton's Pandemic.
Thank you.
All
Yeah.
right. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
Take care.